ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Your customers' and employees' identities are your responsibility to keep safe. But who is helping you stay safe from identity-based threats? Identity is the key to getting security right. And with the right identity partner, so much more is possible for your business than you thought. From strengthening cybersecurity to increasing revenue to reducing inefficiencies and costs, Okta unlocks growth and new possibilities for its customers. Go to securityweekly.com/Okta to learn more about Okta and the company's commitment to leading the fight against identity attacks. If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The Level Blue Futures Report 2024 sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business context that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today by visiting securityweekly.com/Level Blue. Cybersecurity simplified. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. Stay up to date with us on X, formerly known as Twitter, for the latest show clips and updates. Find us at SecWeekly and stay connected with our cybersecurity community. All right, Merlin and Brad are back for the second segment, the do hard part of the Say Easy, Do Hard segment. So in this segment, I want to focus on what should CISOs be doing to prepare themselves for their next CISO job, right? And there's definitely a couple areas we started to hint at, skills and networking and stuff. But Jason, you left that last segment with, I have some ideas, I want to blow this up. So I'm going to let you go first.
Well, no, I wanted to blow it up because we were talking about root cause to a certain degree, right? We were talking about hiring managers, whether it's HR folks or, CEOs or leadership level executives hiring in for the CISO role. And one of the things we talked about was they just don't understand who they're hiring, why they're hiring them, what business value they bring to the table, and how they can actually, bring someone to the table who can help move the business forward in a CISO role. So for me, root causes, if there is no understanding, how do we start to get our fingers on the sphere of influence? The sphere of influence within an organization is board of directors. My goal is to start getting on boards. How do I get myself on a board of directors to start to influence those conversations, educate CEOs on who they should be hiring, educate executive leaders on who they should be hiring, and really take that sphere of influence and push it down, right? In order for us to be able to change the dynamic for businesses to understand who they're hiring, why they're hiring them, we need to be able to influence at the highest levels. So I've taken that on as a personal challenge to see how many boards I can get on. Start small. Maybe start with some nonprofits. Work your way up. Get educated on how to become a board member.
Chicken in the egg, Jason. Chicken in the egg problem.
Yeah.
Like you've got to. So I think a lot of CISOs, especially people who've been doing it for a long time, we've been trying to take that tact, right? I think it's you got to be in the circle to be considered for the circle, which is the frustrating thing of the board role. And I took the time to get QTE certification from Digital Directors Network. Yep. I think also NACD is making some traction on this a little bit, but I think you're 100% right. Like it's still perceived as a technical fit role under a CIO or a CTO or something, right? And it does need that board level conversation, I think, to look at when you're in the seat, the risk, but also to get the right people in the seat to have that conversation and say, hey, look, we're a multi-billion-dollar company, globally presence. Like we can't hire somebody that doesn't have the right bona fides to be able to do this role. Here's what we want to see in the applicant pool. So I agree with you 100%. But I guess the question for everybody is, how do you get in the circle?
Well, that's the thing, right? And we have to fight for it. We have to fight for it. But I feel that folks like us who have 20, 25 years plus in this industry, who've been through the fights, who've been through the war, who've seen the CISO role be uber technical all the way up to you're sitting in a board meeting, we have an obligation to change this. It's on us. It's not the person who's been in security for 5 years who's going to be able to influence. It's on us. We need to take ownership of this, and we need to be fighting for it for the future.
So to that point, Jason, I'm gonna push this back out to Brad and Merlin. I want to get their thoughts on it. Like I've come to this, I'll call it an internal epiphany of myself, and I don't know if the four of you are on the same path, but certainly interested, Brad, Merlin, Matt, Jason, where you come out on this. You know, the lawyers have the bar association, right? There's a CPA certification for the financial side. Like we have things. We have ISACA, we have ISSA, but they're more about like the technical control side. And what I think we need, I'm willing to take the hill on this, but I need some people with me, is we need a professional association of CISOs, right? That actually has some type of accreditation to it that says you're certified to do this. And more importantly, we have a public, essentially an ethics policy. We have a best practices, right? Like we have all these things that when someone says, what am I hiring a CISO for? You can hold up a sheet of paper and said, these are the things you're looking for in a CISO. And if they can't attribute to this, then you're not hiring the right person. And when we go to the board and we say, hey, we want to do X within an organization, we can hold up and say, this is why, because this is best practices across the environment. Here's what we should be doing. And here's, 800 other CISOs who agree and have signed on to this. So I'll drop that and see, does anybody bite or am I nuts?
I'm going to say I 100% agree with you, with the caveat of CIOs have been trying the same stuff for decades and they don't have an accreditation. Chief operating officers don't have an accreditation. Like you can go down the line, right? In technology in general, we've been saying the same thing. We've been saying that there's no board that certifies you as a CIO right now to be known that you'll be a great chief information officer. There really isn't. So any wonk off the street who says, ooh, I can do IT, I'm a computer guy, they can work their way up to be in a leadership position. So yes, but other executive titles are struggling with the same thing. So I mean, if CIOs have been trying this for decades, are we going to be in the same boat? That's the only challenge I put out there.
So I've got pushback, but I'm going to let everybody else jump in first because otherwise I'm monopolizing this.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea. I see both points. Jason, I agree with you. Ben, I agree with you. I think if we do something like that, there has to be some sort of vetting process. Because we see too many of these. I mean, there are so many top CISO awards and things like that, and there's no vetting behind those. And so I think for us to have like some sort of established accreditation, you have to be vetted in some way. That yes, you have met the requirements, you have the experience, you have the skills, and maybe even pass some sort of exam to be vetted for something like that.
I love the concept, Ben. I mean, this is the do hard section, so we get to talk about doing hard things. I think it would be phenomenal. I think it would lend a strong voice around some of the topics we've been talking about in terms of how to hire well into the role, in terms of filtering out folks that may call themselves CISOs but not have the skills to do it. I do think you run into practical challenges potentially on certification against, let's be honest, softer skills that are going to be harder for you to just assess using a test, but are absolutely critical for the role. But it doesn't mean you can't have a body out there that says, look, here's what you need to look for when you think about how to hire somebody into this role and how to put this role into the context of your organization. So I agree that I think it's a great idea. I also think it'd be very, very hard to pull off. But you look at some of the other accreditations out there. I mean, I'm a chartered financial analyst. If we can do that for financial analysis, we ought to be able to do it for the
Why not for this?
Right.
See, and I see that on the financial side and on the legal side. It's a bit different than having to say, like, for, no offense to HR or the sales leader, right? Like that, it's a bit different of a problem set that you're trying to solve. You're trying to attest that this person has the relevant experience and body of work, that they understand the problem set of risk. So that's that's where I get to your side, Jason. I don't think it's just like an accreditation because, look, I don't have my CISSP. And the reason why I don't is I got annoyed when I saw all the salespeople getting their CISSP. And I'm like, yeah, something sells this down the road is there's a reason for it, but I'm not interested, right? Like if anybody can get this, it doesn't say you really understand security, it just says you're good at passing a test. And so I want something more with that background of experience. And I'm not looking to certify that somebody can do technical stuff, but I'm looking for the agreement in a relevant accreditation board that says these are our best practices. To your point, Brad, when you get in this unbalanced side of supply side, demand side, you end up with in the situation we're on now. I think Jason, Yumi, and Matt have all had these conversations with different guests about D&O insurance, liability protection, indemnification. Like, okay, now you're in a supply side imbalance. So good luck getting some of that into the discussion and getting it bought off. But if, like on the legal side, you said, hey, look, like we have agreed, the 800 top CISOs have agreed, we're not taking roles without D&O, indemnification, liability, parachute package, like all this stuff, because it's against the professional code of ethics of things that we're not doing because we want to align our pockets necessarily. We want to make sure it's a rich professional certification and clarification of the role.
Yeah, and Ben, I think from a financial services perspective, there was a little bit of fuel behind it, and it's called GLBA, right?
So, well, and what we were all hoping for in regulation, right, and didn't come.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we have an equivalent, I think that'll be a little bit of fuel that we can leverage to get stuff like that moving. But right now, we don't have the equivalent of a GLBA.
Correct. We got part of the way there, but not all the way there, right? So this ties into two very interesting topics, both from a networking perspective and skill set perspective, because I think one of the challenges the CISO profession has is the network is the security network, right? It's people we've worked with, it's people that work for us, who we work for, very tight-knit community, which it is. However, our networks don't expand into some of these other areas that are actually hiring for this position. Legal, finance, CEO, right? And so one of our challenges,
CISO, everybody becomes a CISO, and like that doesn't help you.
That's it, right? So unless it's a referral, you're done. And so I guess, Brad, one of the things is, how do we, or what should we be doing to expand our networks into where the hiring managers are? Because how do we start to make those connections? If we're trying to get our next CISO gig, knowing 5 other CISOs that are my buddies is fine, but they're not necessarily going to give me my next job. I need to know the CEOs, the CFOs, legal, whoever that's out hiring for these positions. Is there a place for them to go?
I don't think there's any silver bullet here, Matt. You can kind of think it is grades or shades of difficulty and value. So it is absolutely still the case that there is value in the security network. You may have people that worked for you that are in another company and can refer you in. You may have people that that are your peers who maybe aren't looking or not interested in a certain role and say, hey, I'm not interested, but I know somebody that might be, right? So that's where kind of that peer network can play out. When it comes to expanding the network outside of security, that's where, one, I think if you're doing the right thing as a CISO, you're naturally doing this because you're going to know your general counsel. You're going to be integrated with the IT function. You're going to be known and respected across the business. So you will have folks that then leave the companies that you've worked with that have some direct experience working with you, and they can evangelize and say, that's great. Strategically, it's very hard to lay down a strategic path and know where to go hunting for relationships, because as a CISO, you generally don't know what roles are going to be open, right? When you're in the market, the advice I give to individual contributors looking for jobs, or even at the managerial level, or even anywhere below CISO, is build a list of target companies and go build your network of people in those companies that you're interested in working for. That's hard to do when you're going for the top job in a company, because you don't know when that job is going to be open. So that's that's why it's tough. But I do think things you can do, you can build your LinkedIn profile. You can be a voice that helps translate security into business terms. You can get out there and go to non-security conferences, go to NACD, go to HIMSS, go to industry conferences, be a voice about security outside of the security community. That can get you exposure. Is it going to get you a job? I don't know. It is a very random process. Who knows when a moment happens that a job is open. I think it's hard to network your way into it preemptively. And then the last thing I would say is, if you are in market, you should be reaching out to those people on LinkedIn, in your network, at the companies that are hiring. You have to go above and beyond dropping the applications. You have to go above and beyond your security network and go get out there and talk to folks that you think are hiring or know people that are hiring, and just start the conversation. Just start it. That would be my advice.
At the end of the day, Brad, would you agree that if you want to become an executive leader anyway, building networks and relationships should be part of your DNA? If you want to be 100%. An executive leadership, that should be part of your DNA anyway. So get out there and be the leader. Don't let the title or the 100%. Org chart say you're not a leader. Go be the leader.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. The second part of this, skill sets, right? We talked a little bit about this. What skills do you test a CISO for? And look, we've had this conversation multiple times, gentlemen, right? It depends.
Layer 7 protocol analysis, Matt.
Right. If you're a technical CISO, have fun. But part of, I think, what you also have to understand, Brad, right, is the type of CISO you are, what are your skills, and then aligning your skills to what they're looking for. Because we talked about this yesterday, Jason, right, with Alan Alford. Do I want a business CISO? Do I want a technical CISO? Right? Now, that's very simplistic. I think, Brad, you've got a few more variations of that, and I've seen other CISO profiles. But if you're not aligning your skill set to what people are hiring for, it's going to be really difficult to find the right job, isn't it?
I think that's right. And I think there's even more fundamental. You have to have a story. You have to have your pitch. You have to be able to say in 30 seconds what makes you unique and what type of circumstances you're going to be an incredible fit for, right? Now, a lot of times those circumstances are difficult to profile externally, right? Sometimes you don't know if the context is going to be exactly the right fit for you, and it's natural to not want to exclude yourself from certain job opportunities. But I really do think step one is saying, hey, I am really good at this. I'm world-class at this. I know how to solve these types of problems. And that can demonstrate the confidence and self-understanding in and of itself that hiring managers should be looking for as part of a process. So yes.
Know your story. Know what you're good at. Business-driven product leader. It's mine.
Yeah, it's self-awareness. Like, if you're not self-aware,
this is something
it's super hard.
I would open up to the.
I think also,
though, right? Because shouldn't the person who's actually going out for the role have their own red flags as well? Because ultimately, you want to be successful if you take a role. And I never recommend to folks take the first job that gives you the offer if it's not the right fit for you. Because if they want a certain type of CISO and you're not a fit for that, you're going to fail miserably. And then that's your brand, right?
Or even worse, sometimes you're just going to be unhappy.
Are there red flags for candidates? Yeah, or unhappy, right?
That's the self-awareness pice, right? Like I've given this talk before. There's like 5 or 6 different personas that I have for CISOs, right? And so we talked about a couple of them earlier. I said, there's the post-breach, there's the steady state, there's the vendor, right? And so, like, if you don't know that and you get into the wrong situation, if you're a builder and you get into a steady state role, I actually think you're going to get in and be unhappy. And you could be a great fit. They could love you. Everybody could be really happy with you, but like you get down 2 years down the road and you're just like, man, this is a drudgery. I'm like so bored and I hate this and I'm not having fun. Like, if you don't know what you're good at, if you don't know who you are, how can you be good to anybody else? Like, you've got to start there.
But when you're in the drudgery, though, that's such risk because you're not in it, and you're not in it to win it, and that's when you make mistakes.
Yeah, that's my point, though, right? Yeah,
you'll ultimately fail miserably because you'll be unhappy, you won't have your eye on the ball, and you'll make mistakes.
And I do think the reality is it's a challenging market right now. Where 2 years ago, I think when there's more options sitting in front of you, it's a little bit easier to
You should be
say,
selective.
"Hey, this doesn't feel right in my gut." And I've got a blog out there about due diligence questions that CISOs can ask when they're thinking about fit. But it is harder now to be able to say, well, I'm going to go for another 3-4 months not making a paycheck. So I have sympathy for that. But that's also one reason I really encourage people to do some consulting work when they're off on the side, and they may end up liking the vCISO gig better than being a corporate CISO.
Yeah,
It's a very viable option.
that's kind of my question to Merlin and Ben a little bit, right? Is as you've been going through your next CISO search, like there's probably things you knew weren't a fit. I'm curious, did you turn down roles because you knew you weren't going to be a fit? Or does the pressure of the current market state make you a little more open to taking a position just because
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard right now?
Yeah, definitely more open because of the market, because it's not like, people are getting multiple offers, coming in. And so, that definitely is driving some of that. One of the things I want to shift just a little bit. So one of the things, Ben talking about the different types of CISOs. One of the things that I think we'd all agree upon is that, people are like, oh, you got, be a business, aligned to the business. Well, aligned to the business, that also takes like the soft skills, and you need to develop those relationships. I see people like, oh, well, it's, all about company revenue. It's like, I've actually talked with some CISOs who they don't talk to people across the organization when they're developing their security strategy. I'm like, how can you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. So, you have to like build those relationships, and that's part of the soft skills of whether you're technical CISO, business CISO, builder, or whatever you want to call it. You have to have those soft skills and build relationships, because it doesn't matter what size your organization is. It's complex, what you're trying to do, and it takes it takes a village. It takes of people to help you be successful in your role as a CISO, and you need to pull from everybody across the organization to develop a good, sound strategy.
So, you asked a kind of a specific question, Matt, and I'll pivot a little bit to talk about that, and maybe Brad, you can weigh in on if you've heard this from other people. But like, the first question usually, or very soon in the conversation with the recruiter or somebody, is, well, what are your salary expectations? And I always pivot to like, man, that's so one variable way to look at this. And like, I don't look at it as one variable. It's a multivariable approach. So like, what's salary, what's bonus, what's work-life balance, what's, equity compensation, what are you looking for in a CISO? Like and I have turned down stuff in the past where I've said, I've even, just heard from other colleagues, like in referrals, that like, yeah, that's not a great culture there. Right. And so culture fit is a huge thing for me. Um, it's not easy to just say yes, it's a fit or it's not. You got to look at all the variables. I think to the economics of the situation today, it depends upon your personal situation. Like, how much of a war chest do you have? Like, what's your connections with people, right? Like, what's your family situation? Do you have some health issue going on with your parents or a child or a spouse? And so, you know, I, I've tried to give people grace in hiring situations, because we don't always know what's going on with them. And so people can have a bad day. They can be forced to take a situation where, look, it's just they had to, right? And so they're trying to fit in the best they can. And I think it's everybody's duty to treat people as human and personal. And I think sometimes we get a little too I'm going to say technical, and I don't mean from like a security side. I mean from a like, yes, this guy doesn't fit all the boxes, or this person's overqualified. Like, how many times have you heard, thank you for, but we're looking for a vice president and you're a CISO, right? Or you'll get somebody's resume for a vice president or a senior director role. They've been a CISO before, and you're like, yeah, I'm not looking at this guy. Like, he could maybe be competitive to me. Well, maybe he knows a lot more than you in certain areas, and maybe it's going to be a benefit to your program. So it's a long answer to say I think it's a complex scenario that you have to look at, and you have to look at all the variables to figure out what's right for now, with an eye towards how do I build a long-term strategy for both myself and the company.
Yeah, because you don't want to take a position that you fail at in a short period of time,
Yeah.
because then you're right back on the job market, and it's probably even harder now because you just had that short stint that didn't work out, right? Like, that's almost a black mark on your resume.
And sometimes it's not your fault, right? Like, just people, you can look at my LinkedIn and see like I've worked for companies where they've gotten acquired by people, right? We had
Mm-hmm.
COVID happen, and the total economy went down in a handbasket really quickly. And when your revenue goes to zero, company makes decisions. And as a result, I stepped out of a role, right? Went to a different company. So like, it's not as easy to say like this guy has been at, he spent these last three companies, he's been there 2 years. There may be really good reasons for that, right? And some of them might be, hey, you stepped out of a role because you were asked to be doing things that in the current, regulatory state you can't do anymore, right? And you shouldn't do. So it's on the hiring side, like understand the complexity, treat people as human, look for the bigger picture, and look for the people who are actually going to die on the hill for you versus the people who may show very well as a show horse but can't win a race.
That's a good illustration.
It's the root cause, right? We need to change the hiring methodologies. We need to influence the hiring managers and the HR folks and the executive leaders. We have to be influencing them to change their mindset.
And I think it goes back to what Brad's saying about telling a story. Brad and I have known each other for a little while, and that's one of the things that when I first met him, he's like, what's your story? And I actually had to spend a few months actually developing my story. I've been doing this for over 25 years. Like, what is my story? And I actually reached out to people in my network who've known me for a number of years and be like, how would you describe me? That's actually a good place to start, because like sometimes we don't see things about ourselves that other people do. And that really helped me really well form my story.
I'm going to put in a plug here and say, I do think this is an area where security leaders can role model the change. We talk a lot about job descriptions in cybersecurity, and I would say 90+% of the ones that are out there are garbage, right? Mm-hmm. Do you really need a bachelor's degree or a master? Do you need 5 years of experience with XYZ technology? When you actually talk to the hiring managers and the leaders, they want sharp, quick learning, passionate people who know how to work with others, who have core underlying technical knack and skills. But that is not how you see job descriptions written. And it is not what the recruiters at our companies tend to go off and screen for when they do the check the box exercise. So if we're saying, hey, there's check the box exercises that are problems for recruiter screens when hiring CISOs, I think we can start to tell stories as security leaders, how we've changed that in the companies that we've worked with. And I think that's a compelling story you can bring out to the market.
I absolutely love that. When I work with HR folks, I talk about the outcomes that I want. I want someone with the right attitude and the right aptitude. The attitude to fit into our culture, the attitude to want to learn, the attitude to want to excel, the attitude to want to do right by our clients and put 100% in, but then the aptitude to really take into it and learn and dig in and want to be passionate about their job. Those are the two things
in HR, that means you're going to have to talk to people. You're not going to see that on a resume. It's going to be hard to read on a resume. You're going to have to talk to people, and you're going to have to screen them, and you're going to have to do some work, and you're going to have to think out of the box.
Exactly right.
Gentlemen, very interesting conversation. Merlin and Brad, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much. I really appreciate the conversation.
That was awesome. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.